Hey guys, I'm going to give an explanation on the Room of Fate, how to choose the arrows to get the fate you want, especially when you can't see all 4 arrows, because I know that confuses a lot of people still. So here I'm showing where to stand. One person here, here, and right here, and the fourth person, if there's one, will just kind of stand right alongside of them, kind of in that area. You got to kind of find your own spot so you can see at least 3 arrows. It's going to be different from everybody based on what TV. So you can see I'm standing in here and I'm going to count the arrows 1, 2, 3, 4 as they populate. So when you're playing solo and you stand in the right spot, you can actually see all 4 arrows. But when you're playing co-op, you're typically going to only be able to see up to 3 arrows unless you're playing on standard definition, in which case if nobody moves when they get in the Room of Fate, they can usually see all 4 arrows. But that's only going to be for the people that are playing standard definition. For everybody playing on high definition, you're typically only going to see 3 arrows, and you got to find the right place so that you can position yourself to see all 3 arrows. So if you're in standard definition, whether you're playing solo or co-op, essentially if you make sure that nobody moves when you get in the Room of Fate, you'll be able to see all 4 arrows. But if you're playing high definition and you're on solo, then you need to find the position to stand where you can see all 4 arrows. This may be on the right side of the statue. You might have to move around a little bit in order to find this. When you're in co-op and you're on high definition, then everybody needs to move together into the proper position, such as the right side of the statue as you see in the video, and you're only going to see 3 out of the 4 arrows. So then in the video I'll explain later on how to determine where that 4th arrow was in what order, because the order of the arrows determines the fates, and I'll get into that now. So the first arrow that spawns in is going to be the Fortune and Fortitude, otherwise known as the gem. With this fate, all pickups last 2 times longer, except for the monkey bombs. You'll start with a 2 times multiplier after every death, and it's great for the green player because when the green player picks up a helicopter, all of the zombies will go for that helicopter. They won't go for anybody else. However, this doesn't work for any of the other players unless green's not in the game. And when green's not in the game, then the blue guy taking the helicopter will bring all the zombies to him. When blue and green are both not in the game, then when the red guy jumps in the helicopter, it'll work for him. This helicopter trick only works on zombies. It does not work on the dogs, and it does not work on the gorilla when you're fighting the boss rounds. So you have to be a little careful still. You're not going to be fully protected because you still got to watch for dogs. The second arrow that spawns is going to be the firepower, also known as the death machine. With this fate, you're going to have a death machine for the rest of the game. If you were playing a 4-player game, I might suggest the yellow player to have the death machine, but it doesn't really make a big difference. The green player is probably the one that makes the most difference on what color they get. The third arrow is the friendship, also known as the chicken. And when you pick up the chicken, it gives you an extra gun the rest of the game. So it's as if you have 2 guns. And every chicken that you pick up will last twice as long for you than if somebody else were to pick it up, except for Fortune, because it'll last twice as long for Fortune as well. And finally, the 4th and last arrow is going to be Furious Feet, also known as fast boots. With this, you're going to move faster. You're going to start each round with a minimum of 3 speed boosts if you run out of speed boosts at the round before. And this is good for the green player if Fortune's not going to be playing in the game. So if you're playing a 2 or a 3-player game, then this would be good for the Furious Feet to be the green player. If the gem is going to be in the game and the gem's going to be the green player, then like I said before, I would maybe have firepower being yellow and have the Furious Feet be the red player. That way, while they're running around on some of the darker maps, they'll be able to see themselves easily as they're running around more than the others, and that leaves the chicken then to be the blue player. If you're playing a 3-player game or anything less than 4 players, it may not be a bad idea to avoid the blue player for the darker maps, especially on some of the later rounds or more difficult rounds like the crawlers the second, third, fourth time around. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the more advanced details about the Room of Fate that I've never seen anybody really expand upon very well. We're going to show you the arrows as they spawn in so that you can see them coming in 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to put them on a loop so that you get a feel for the rhythm of the arrows, because that's going to be important in finding that missing arrow that you can't see. It does spawn in, but you just can't see it because of the resolution of the game. So what we're going to be trying to determine is, when is that missing arrow actually spawning in? Sometimes it'll come in between the first and the second arrow that you see, sometimes between the second and the third, and sometimes it's the first arrow that spawns in the fourth arrow. Those sometimes can be the most difficult ones to determine when you're trying to choose your fate and get it right. And finally, we're also going to be listening to the sounds that you hear as the arrows are spawning in. And this might help some people. This is one of the more difficult strategies to try to determine the arrows. But hopefully, if you listen to it enough times and get a feel for it, it might help a little for some of you. And finally, at the end, we'll throw some test examples in there for you to practice for yourself and see that this strategy works. So in this first clip, it's just going to be a quick example of showing you the arrows spawning in the order that they're spawning in. You'll watch me at the very beginning stand in the right position so that I'll be able to see all 4 arrows. So now I'm going to show you 8 loops of the fates arrows as they're populating so that you get an idea on the rhythm. There's only 0.06 seconds in between each arrow, and also try to listen to the clicks as the arrows are spawning. So now I'm going to slow it down to about half speed and turn the volume up a little. And when you see the second arrow spawn in, you hear a click, like maybe a door slamming shut. And then shortly after all 4 arrows spawn in, you hear another click. So listen for those sounds. And I kind of go by, when I hear that sound start to come in, that's exactly precisely when the second arrow is spawning in. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like when you cannot see the first arrow and you can see the other 3. So again, the pattern was right, left, up, down, but we couldn't see the first arrow, but we could hear that clicking sound when the second arrow spawned in. It looked like it was the first arrow to the left, but it was actually the second, and we can tell by that clicking sound. So on this next video, you're going to see the first arrow spawn in, you're going to see a brief pause, and then you're going to see the third and the fourth arrow. The one you won't see is the second arrow, which will be on the left. So it went to the right, there was a quick break, and then it went up and down. So for the next video, we're going to make the third arrow as the one that we can't see. So you're going to see right, left, a quick break, and then you'll see the bottom arrow. Okay. Okay, we have one more example to look at, and this is when the fourth arrow is the one that you cannot see. This is one of the more difficult ones as well, because you see 3 arrows in a row with no pause between them. So again, you have to pay attention to that sound while you're watching this so that you can find that clicking sound, so that you know when that second arrow is actually spawning in. So when the arrows start spawning, you're going to see a quick 1, 2, 3, and you'll never see that fourth arrow. So if you listened carefully, you heard the click when you saw the second arrow. So that tells you that left was the second arrow, up was the third, which means the one that you couldn't see was down, which was the fourth arrow. Now we're going to do a little test and see if you can figure these ones out. And then I'll display the results. So you saw down, left, a quick break, and then up. That little pause was the arrow you couldn't see populating in, which was the third arrow. Here's another. Notice where we're standing along the statue. So you saw the left arrow, then you saw a little pause. That was the second arrow that you couldn't see, and then you saw down, up. So I hope that helps you figure out the arrows, gives you a little practice and something to go back and watch. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below, and I want to send a thank you to Rambo, who gave me a little bit of help with this video.